Hello everybody, my name is Ben Gates. I direct the campus ministry program here at Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne, and also at Indiana Institute of Technology in Fort Wayne. And I want to welcome you to a brand new program that campus ministry is launching called the Campus Ministry Business Forum. We really appreciate you tuning in today. What you're about to see is a luncheon gathering. We have invited a number of business students from the Dormer School of Business here at IPFW to meet and have a conversation with an area CEO about what makes a business successful. And they're going to talk about ethics, integrity, and other issues that are really important in the marketplace. The entrepreneur that we're featuring today is Brian Emerick. Brian is the CEO of a company called Micropulse Incorporated, a company located near Columbia City, Indiana, that makes orthopedic medical devices and is a leader in that particular field. Brian launched this business back in 1988, so he's a great person to talk to these students about not only pioneering but sustaining a business. And we're hoping that today these students will be able to network and connect with Brian, but also learn from him valuable lessons and principles that will help them in their own business career. This is another example of campus ministry really trying to set the pace in terms of leadership here on the IPFW campus and helping students to grow in their leadership capabilities. We're hoping to be able to do these luncheons at least once a month. So if you happen to know a business student or a student of any sort who would be interested in joining us for one of these luncheons in the future, please give us a call at the campus ministry office. Our number is 260-481-6992. Once again, thank you for joining us today and enjoy the conversation. I'm going to turn it over now to Brian Emerick, and he's going to be telling the students about himself and about his business.
And as I mentioned, 35 years ago I was walking these sidewalks here. I don't think all the buildings were the same back then, but I was studying mechanical engineering technology. But before that, during high school I had an opportunity to work at a tool and die shop as a janitor, which I did, and I really started to fall in love with that industry and the machinery and everything that was involved in the tool and die industry. So during the course of those 2 years finishing high school, I decided to go full-time right out of high school and be a tool and die maker. They have an apprenticeship program and all that. So I started at a company here in Fort Wayne. But my mother had always told me that I was going to go to college. So to satisfy her, I came out and I took 9 classes and picked up what I could. I attended 3 or 4 years, but I was working full-time. And so I really didn't get a degree. I didn't even get half a degree, really. And then got married, started having kids, so the college thing kind of got put on hold. Stayed at the tool and die shop, but after about 8 or 9 years, I started thinking that, I think I could do something on my own. I just had this burning desire to start a business. And that wasn't new for me because ever since I was a little kid, I was kind of entrepreneurial. We sold pumpkins in the front yard, and I had a mowing business, and I was, we plowed snow in high school with some buddies. We had contracts with subdivisions, and back in the blizzard of '78, we bought 4-wheel drive trucks and thought we were cool with snowplows, and did that too. So I had always been interested in expressing, entrepreneurialism, if you will. I didn't know what that meant back then. I just knew that I kind of liked to work hard and do my own thing. So anyway, after about 8 or 9 years, I decided to start my own business. So by that time, we had our second kid was on the way. Had a house, and we put a second mortgage on our house, went to the bank and got a loan for $50,000. Back then that was a lot of money. Bought a CNC machine, which is a computer controlled machine that's used in the tool and die industry, put it in the garage, and started a business. I continued to work my full-time job though for another 2 years. So I hired my nephew and another young person right out of high school to help me with the business, but for 2 years I didn't draw a salary from the business, and just kept working my job and doing that. So the business, started to develop a little bit and decided to quit my job. So in 1990 I did that. I had put a small building up next to my home, which is out in rural Woodley County, and went full time. So I'll try to keep this short because I want to allow time for questions, and I'd like to hear a question from every one of you, so be thinking about a question. I don't care what it is. What are my kids' names? I don't care. But I do appreciate questions because that's the funnest part of it. I want to hear what you guys are interested in and all that, not me. So I'm going to fast forward to today, and then I'll fill in some blanks. Today, the company's called Micropulse. We have 300 employees, and we are 100% focused on the orthopedic industry. So we make spine implants, fusion cages, bone plates, trauma devices from head to toe, foot and ankle. We do shoulders, wrist, elbows, you name it, we've got involved with it. We're primarily a contract manufacturer, so our customers like Zimmer Biomet, DePuy, Stryker, Synthes, others around the country and the world send us their blueprints, and then we manufacture that for them. So going from starting in the garage to today, what I consider to be a well-oiled machine with a great bunch of people. There were a lot of hiccups and detours and things that happened between then and now. And I've learned a whole lot, and I continue to learn today, and that's, if I could send a message, that's never stop learning, listen, and the best thing that you can do is to know what you don't know, because the dangerous people are the ones that think they know it all, and they operate that way. That's very, very dangerous. It took me a while, because to be an entrepreneur, you typically have high confidence. I can do anything, I'm not afraid of anything, Well, that can be dangerous too. So you have to have a certain amount of that, or you would never start a business, because you'd be paralyzed maybe by fear or the fear of risk. So there's a healthy balance between risk and planning and being a little conservative. And there's no one type of entrepreneur. I mean, there's a broad variety of people, and I'm just one sort like that. But in the beginning, my idea was to do everything for everybody. No real focus in the tool and die industry. It's kind of, that's where everything starts in manufacturing. So you can build dies, molds, machines, whatever. So we were doing all that, and that worked okay. I got up to about 90 employees in the late 90s, and then this thing called offshoring hit, and a lot of our customers were closing plants and starting plants around the globe, and we lost a lot of business. And basically, I was backed into a corner because my business model would not support the future of our company. I had to do something. And it got pretty ugly there for a while, and it took us a while. I brought in some advisors, and we kind of wrestled with our identity. What were we going to do? Because that model was not going to sustain us in the future, and it was a very scary time. I almost lost the entire company, and that would have been really bad for myself and everybody that worked there. But we did get ourselves figured out. And I'm a big fan of Jim Collins' Good to Great books and Built to Last and Why Great Companies Fail, and there's a whole series of Jim Collins books, and really a fan. But we went through some strategic planning processes and determined what would be viable for our future, and we settled on the medical industry. We were in my early years of business, the medical industry for us was anywhere from 10 to 40% of our business, but we were also in automotive and consumer products and everything else. And so we decided, the medical business has been good for us. We're going to focus on that, and we're going to burn the bridges of everything else we've ever done, building dies and molds and all that. And we had built a pretty nice business doing that, but that business was just disappearing. So in the early 2000s, we made the decision to focus 100% of our business. We actually had an auction and sold equipment that we weren't going to need, and we thought it would take 3 years, and the reality is it took about 12 months to, dial our focus in, and it was absolutely the best thing we ever did in the history of the company, and it was the most difficult process. But I would argue that if you have a businessman that doesn't have some scars, he probably, is either lying or he hasn't really done it, because almost every business has gone through difficult times. We learn the most from those difficult times. I don't wish that on anybody, but there's an important lesson. That when you do have things happen or it gets tough, you got to bull your way through it and either go through it, around it, over it, under it. And there are people to help you too, with almost anything. So
I'm going to kind of wrap up that part of it. Oh, so my education, unconventional, right? So I didn't have a college degree when I started a business. I knew how to make things. I was a tool and die maker. I knew how to run machines and all that. But I was thrown into doing payroll, and I was doing everything in the beginning, and I wasn't good at most of that stuff. So that worked okay, and then I started hiring people and putting them in places. But after going through that really rough time of not really having business strategy, my model for business in the early years was throw a machine in the garage, hire a couple people, and then get some work, and then buy another machine and build a building and hire people. It was not strategic. It was going after opportunities, and too many opportunities can be the worst thing. And when we decided to focus, I thought, well, that's going to limit us, and it's going to, we're not going to be as diversified. But the reality is that we've gotten so good at what we do, we have so many opportunities, and we have diversity in our industry. We have customer diversity, we have product diversity. So within orthopedics, you have lots of divisions. You have extremities, you have trauma, you have sports medicine, you have spine, you have large joints and reconstruction. So all those things have their own economic cycles. So we're diversified between all those. We're diversified with customer base. We are all in healthcare. So, one could argue that, well, you should be in aerospace and everything else, but I go back to focus. Be really good at what you do and do a lot of it, and it pays off. So after going through the rough times, I decided, as CEO, and I'm the sole owner of the company. I started with a second mortgage on a bank. I don't have any investors involved. It's always been me and the bank. I decided that, talking to myself, it's like you either need to replace yourself as CEO or you need to up your game. Become more strategic, more intelligent about planning your future of your business. So I shopped around for MBA programs, and I was really looking for something that would stretch me. And I knew some people had gone to various programs, Duke and Notre Dame and others. And I looked at 10 or 15 different programs. I settled on a Notre Dame MBA program. I didn't have an undergrad, so how do you do an MBA without an undergrad? Well, I found out that they let one out of their class of 60 each year in without an undergrad. But you have to take the GMAT, you have to have letters of recommendation, you have to jump through all these hoops, be interviewed and everything else. Well, long story short, I went through all that process and I studied really hard for GMAT and did well in that, and I got in to the executive MBA program. And I spent 2 years and really threw myself into it, during which time I let my management team basically run the company. I was there part-time. But a lot of things happened during that time. It was a very rich experience, and I'm not saying Notre Dame's the only MBA program. For me, it was the timing and the quality of the education. It was wonderful, and it really upped my game. And it also proved to me that, hey, I've got others on my team in the company that can run this and do certain things that I used to do better than I ever did them. So when I came back into the company in 2006, I was 46 years old. I didn't need to do all the things that I used to do, get involved in operations and scheduling and quoting and all those things. When I came back, I became much more strategic and big picture thinking, and it really allowed the company to excel. So, I would say that it took me until I was in my 40s to really figure out that, hey, you don't need to be good at everything. You don't need to know everything. You need to surround yourself with, exceptional people and do the few things that I'm good at. I'm passionate about my business. I can sell. I know manufacturing. I've got some skill sets, but I don't have nearly all the skill sets. Part of my weakness is overcommitting because I know how I work, but I expect that everybody else just does that too, and it doesn't work that way in a large organization. So that's my story, and then after I graduated from the MBA, I was kind of feeling weird about not having an undergrad. So then I picked up some classes at Indiana Wesleyan and stuff, so now I do have an undergrad. But I was 48 years old when I got my undergrad, and it's really weird. And by the way, master's level classes you can't get credit in an undergrad, so don't try that. I did take a lot of Clep and Dante, so to finish up. Okay, so I'm done talking. I'd like to have questions, and I hope each of you have one. So who wants to start?
I do. How did you know where to find your customers for your business?
Okay, so in the tool and die industry, especially going back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was every tool and die maker's dream to start his own business in the garage, and that happened a lot. So I kind of grew up in my early career in a company where I saw 4 or 5 other individuals go out and start their own businesses. as far as the customers, you know, my business to this day is more of a business-to-business situation. So we get a customer and we do ongoing business. It's not like if you're a building contractor, you have to have somebody to build a building for, you know, new all the time, or retail, it's, you know, new customers. Well, you get repeats. But for us, once you establish a relationship, you have that. So I had I started out with a kind of a unique machine. It was a computer-controlled computer numerically controlled wire EDM machine. And it was kind of a new technology in the industry that not everybody had. So I had differentiation, and I would provide that service for other tool and die shops and some larger manufacturing businesses. So that was my little niche, and I bought the first machine, and within 3 months I was busy enough that I bought the second machine. But I only had a handful of customers, 4 or 5 customers. But they were, you know, you'll find that people want to give you a break. I mean, when you're starting out, I mean, I think it'd be a lot harder today because there are so many barriers, like in the medical industry with the FDA and the regulation and everything. It'd be very hard to do what I did today, you know, or do what I did then today. Not that it couldn't be done. It would be, there's more barriers to entry because of regulation and the, you know, the expense. So I don't know if I answered that well, but I guess I was in the industry, so I knew who the potential customers were. And you know, I was careful that I didn't like steal customers of my former employer, because that was part of the agreement. When they first found out I was going to start a business, they wanted to terminate me. But I went back to them and said, you know, I'd like to stay here, and if you allow me to stay here, I'm not going to take your employees, I won't take your customers, you know. And it ended up working really well because they outsourced business to me too, overflow business. So a lot of my business was just taking overflow from other companies in the, you know, within a 50-mile radius. And I had a couple really loyal customers, like a company in Sturgis, Michigan, that every Saturday I'd drive my car up there and get some work to do, bring it back, and you know, we'd do our work on those parts and take them back. So it started out as a very niche, and then I kept adding capabilities and capacities around that over the years till, you know, it was just an evolution. I mean, 1988 is when I started the business, so it's been a long time, you know, to get to 300 employees. We're growing about 10% a year. We're hiring about 25 to 30 people a year. You know, another thing we started doing in 2004, I had an opportunity to help start another business with some acquaintances in Warsaw, an engineer and a marketing guy, and we started another company to develop a total shoulder, a product. We ended up selling that company to Tournier, and we're still doing business today with them. So we've been incubating companies. Today we have 3 companies in our Orthovation Center, which is basically a business incubator. And typically when we help start a business, we invest in that business, anywhere from 10 to 50% ownership. And then we provide all the services that a little business needs: space, accounting, corporate governance. We help them raise money if they need money. You know, just help with all the things that a small business that I needed when I started my business. And it's really worked out well. We've got 3 businesses in there now, and the idea is that we start these businesses, and they're all within our space of medical, you know, and they're customers of Micropulse, my main company. So it's a win-win situation, because the young entrepreneur, you know, gets a leg up, you know, with somebody that's done it before, and we get a customer. And then ultimately, if that startup business is sold, we usually continue as a supplier to that new company. So for me, I love to start things, I love to create things as an entrepreneur. So that's been, for me, you know, honestly, my contract manufacturing business is boring, you know. I mean, I've been doing it a long time, it doesn't really need me, you know, so what do I do with myself? Well, I got to go out and start companies and help other people do that. So, long answer. Man, we'll never get done if I take that long to answer your questions. Any others? Yes.
How did you get into medical in the first place? I know you said before you had the 30 to 40%.
Yeah, by accident. At that point, I didn't identify the medical industry as, oh, this is where we need to be. It was whoever I heard about that needed some services rendered. So, you know, being close to Zimmer and Biomet, I shouldn't say that totally. I mean, I was attracted to the companies in Warsaw, because we're in Columbia City. Well, we're west of Fort Wayne, right? We're in Whitley County. So 30 miles from the world's capital of orthopedics. 1/3 of the world's orthopedic industry is in Warsaw, Indiana. $40 billion industry. So it's an important industry to this region in Indiana. So a little bit by accident, and because I didn't differentiate that medical was any better than automotive or anything else, because traditionally Northeast Indiana was heavy automotive, and there's tons of opportunities. You know, a lot of our ancestors grew up at International Harvester, you know, working there, or Dana Corp, or some of those legacy companies that are no longer have much of a presence, if any, here.
Follow up, was it like equipment that helped you? Because I know you said your machine when you first started out was cutting edge.
Yeah. That was an advantage for me initially, because I had something that not everybody had. And even companies that had those machines were usually out of capacity, so they needed help. So it was overflow work. So yes, and the other advantage for me was it was a computer-controlled machine, so it would run unattended. So I would be, literally, it was in the garage of our house, attached garage. So I had a 2-year-old and a baby that was born a week that I bought that machine. So it was chaos. And I also had a 16-year-old nephew that moved in that was helping me with the business in our basement. So, you know, as we think back, we laugh. My wife and I think, what were we thinking? She's not a risk taker, so that's been interesting over the years too. You know, I'm a risk taker, she's not. So, but we've been married 33 years, and it's worked pretty well. But that was a differentiation, you know, that we had that, and that certainly was helpful. And, you know, for me, I had worked and supervised a department that had a whole bunch of those machines in my job. So for me to buy one of those machines and put it in the garage, it was something that I already knew, you know, technically how to support it. I didn't really have the business training, you know, and the marketing training and all that kind of thing. So, you know, that's where, if any weaknesses were, that's where it was, you know. I didn't have a business plan. I mean, I had one in my head, you know, but it was like, work hard, you know, try to make good parts, you know, buy a machine and that. Okay, so we've gotten 3 questions from this side.
Are you just working out of the one facility right now?
Good question. Yes, we are. We have 160,000 square feet on State Road 14 in Whitley County. But at one point, we had a small building in Columbus City, a separate site, and I learned some lessons about, you know, separate locations. And then the nephew that I mentioned that started with me when I was in the garage, he went off to get his college education, got married, ended up in Phoenix, Arizona, working for a company, and decided he wanted to start his own business. But he didn't have any money or, you know, any resources, so we formed a joint venture and started Micropulse West in Phoenix, Arizona in 1994. And my nephew was 22 years old, and long story short, he did an exceptional job and grew that company, and we ended up selling the company, and he's off doing another business today, but we had that business for 10 years. It was an interesting experience, and had I not had my nephew, who was really a business guru, it would have been difficult because, you know, 2,000 miles away is tough. So, you know, I was a funding partner, but he ran the business and took care of it. So today we're one location. We have thought about going offshore to low labor cost areas, but to date, that just hasn't made sense. We've looked at Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico and thought about China and other places in the world, but we're trying to, we're doing the hard stuff, and we're also automating to a great degree. So we have automated work cells where robots and equipment are doing the work, the manual labor things. Not to so we don't have to, or not to lay off or fire people, because, you know, we're still hiring right through that. But, you know, that's what's going to set us apart. Use people's minds and not necessarily their, you know, their brawn. Yes?
So within your orthopedic specialty, do you have kind of a #1 bestseller product that other companies ask for mainly from you?
We have some niches, but we literally make thousands of different parts. There are some things that we don't do much of, and really the large joints, the hips and knees, are such a commodity, you know, that, and a lot of the large companies are doing those in-house, so we don't really get involved. About 15% of our business is related to large joints. Now, if you look at the industry, there are the implants that actually get placed in the body, but a big part of that business is the instrumentation that supports those implants. So if you think of a knee system or a hip system, there are about $70,000 worth of instruments in cases that go into the OR to do that surgery. And they're specific to a Zimmer knee or a Biomet knee or a DePuy knee. So those are all, and those are owned by the orthopedic companies. The hospitals don't buy those. They're consigned. So it's a huge, huge manufacturing opportunity. Now, we're a contract manufacturer, so you might say, well, don't they make their own stuff? Well, some of it. If you look at the big guys, they might make 60% of what they sell, and everything else they outsource. But there's a lot of smaller orthopedic companies that don't make anything. They have determined that that is not their core competency. They're going to design products, they're going to sell them, they're going to create the distribution chain, the R&D, they're going to do all that important stuff and let contract manufacturers make the products. Part of the reason they can do that is, over time, contract manufacturers like us have matured to a point where we're as good as, if not better than, the OEMs themselves. And you've seen that in the automotive industry. The orthopedic and medical industry is way behind the automotive industry because it's a lower volume. Automotive companies realized a long time ago that, hey, we're just going to throw these trucks together, cars together, and have everybody else do the parts and make sure they're there within an hour when we need them, and they're really driving that. The automotive industry is so huge that they have the leverage and clout to do that. Orthopedic industry is way behind that because just don't have the leverage. So, another question. Yes?
Are most of your customers in America or globally?
Almost all of them are in the U.S. So if you think about the $44 billion orthopedic industry, 60% of that world's industry is the U.S. So every orthopedic company around the world wants to sell in the U.S. Now we have a German and an Italian customer, and we're not opposed to that, but we're here in the Midwest, and there's so much opportunity in the U.S. The business we've gotten outside the U.S. has been by accident. We didn't look for it. It came to us. And we're not opposed to that, but the other thing is the reimbursement rates for a hip or a knee in Europe and most of the parts of the world are 30% less than the U.S. So, they have government health care in some situations, and there are just a lot more pressures. So if you look at the orthopedic industry, the second largest market, I think, is in Japan, and then you've got like Germany, and then it goes down from there. There's some emerging markets like Brazil and Turkey and other places where they're starting to get some traction. China, for sure. And you've seen some of the major ortho companies go to China and establish plants, Medtronic and others. They either buy or start their own divisions. And many of the major OEMs have manufacturing plants around the world, including China. Biomed has 2 big plants in China. So, as a supplier, we're kind of competing against those too. But we're seeing inflationary pressure on these Chinese facilities and everything, and some of the business is actually flowing back to the U.S. So, if we're smart about how we do things, we automate, we get really efficient, we lean out our organizations, we're competing every day. Others? I'm not keeping track, so, I won't know if somebody doesn't or does ask a question. Yes?
So you said that you don't get a lot of international business just because of the way healthcare is.
It's part of
Do you expect your business to change at all based on any upcoming healthcare changes?
There's certainly a lot of pressure. So I serve on the Parkview Health System Board of Directors, and I'm real involved with the health system and the finance committee and all that. So it's interesting because the hospitals basically are end customer, right? We're manufacturing at the bottom and feeding into the industry, and then the hospitals and the doctors are consuming the product. And there's a shift too. In the old days, 10, 20 years ago, the surgeon saw a new device at a show, and he just went back to the hospital and said, I'm going to use this, and it happened. Well, today, it's not that way. For one thing, more surgeons and doctors are being employed by health systems, and then they have value committees. And they're not going to let just any company come in and sell their widgets. They got to go through all kinds of justification, on the price and the viability of it, how good it is for the patient and all that, which it's all good. But it's much, much harder for a new startup company to get in a hospital and sell product. So there's a lot of things that will influence us, but as a contract manufacturer, most of that pressure is going to come to my customers, and then it will come to us basically through cost pressure. Do it more for less, and we feel that all the time, but I don't think you ever get away from that.
What components would you attribute to your initial success as you were just starting out?
Components as in like general business components? Yeah. So never give up. It's that idea of just, don't get discouraged because there's always a way. You just figure it out. if you don't have the answer, you ask for it or whatever. And you got to have that tenacity. There are some times you get, you have successes and you have failures, and you have to navigate through that. And I think, when you're starting a business, though, there's so much excitement, and if you're not passionate and excited about what you're doing, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. But it's, as I think back, I wouldn't want to go through all that process. And if I did go through it, I'm sure I would do it a little differently. Hindsight's always 20/20. But I have a lot of fond memories, and just the adrenaline that you have when you're going through that is second to none. Certainly, starting a business is not for everybody, but for those that have that desire, anybody can do it. I mean, it's like I said, there's not one flavor of entrepreneur, and I've wrestled with the question: are entrepreneurs born or made? And there's a certain amount of it that's born, that's just kind of genetic, if you will. But on the other hand, so many things can be learned, and the information's available. We're pretty involved in economic development in our region, and we have a regional marketing partnership that's working in the region. We have a regional opportunities council. You've heard about maybe Road to a Million and the millennials. We're trying to attract more people to this region through quality of life and opportunities and everything. There's a big push toward supporting entrepreneurism in Northeast Indiana, and providing funding and counseling for young businesses and all that. And I was going to say young people, but there's a story of Don Wood, who started a company called 80/20 in Whitley County that has 400 employees today. And Don was 59 years old when he started his business. I'm 56, and to think that I would be starting a brand new business from scratch in 3 years, wow, that's something. I'll probably keep starting businesses, but they're not my main flagship. I've got a solid business that I can leverage. So you're never too old to start a business, and Don started in the enterprise zone in southeast Fort Wayne, and he's got a big building out on US 30. If you drive out there, you'll see 80/20, beautiful glass offices, 3 stories, and it's neat. So did I answer the question?
I'll also ask another one. What kind of characteristics or skills do you specifically look for in people whenever you're hiring, regardless of position?
Yes.
Just kind of the person.
Yes, great question. One of the hardest lessons I've learned over the years is on hiring. I am an optimist. I always look for the good in people and things. And you would think, oh, that's wonderful. Well, not so much in business. I got to tell you, you need to assume that people are lying to you until they prove otherwise. I mean, I hired a number of people that I made hiring mistakes. Not that they're bad people, but it's all about character. For me, our company is founded on the principles of servant leadership and humility and integrity, and quality. And that's what personally I want to be known for, and I believe our company is known for that. We've studied our culture. We're doing a ton of succession planning and leadership development because, I plan to be with the business a long time, and I don't want to sell the business, but I'm also concerned about that next generation. So we're investing heavily in our people, and we have a rigorous process that we put people through, testing and multiple interviews and evaluation, because to me it's all about the person and the character and much less about the skill sets. And I've got people in positions that have degrees or experience in areas that they're not working in today at my company, and that's fine. I mean, we have people that have teaching degrees that are doing almost engineering jobs, and it's just that's really not a big deal to me. Now, if we're hiring a staff accounting person or something, or a controller, of course we want them to have an accounting degree, but they're going to be, regardless of their degree and everything, they're going to have to still fit the character profile, the soft skills of teamwork and everything. But it really goes down to that attitude, because if you don't have a certain level of humility, then you're not going to be open to learning and listening. And our culture is so tight with teamwork and everything that everybody, they work together, and nobody's out there trying to do things themselves. Everybody's watching out for each other if they miss something or whatever, and you have to have that. the trust has got to be there in an organization. There's a lot of organizations that have polluted, caustic cultures. And as you guys look for opportunities, try to find a company that gets that culture thing, because it can be so powerful. That is our competitive advantage. My company's competitive advantage is not just our people, but it's the way they work together. It's the culture that binds them together. And we can beat anybody if we have that. And I've been involved with Parkview long enough to know that that's kind of the culture they try to do. Now they have 10,000 employees, so it's tough, but that's the culture they're trying to live there, and we're trying to do that as well. So to guard that, we're ever so careful about bringing people in. And it's kind of rare that we'll bring somebody from the outside into a leadership role, because for one, I value my people so much. I don't want to experiment with somebody and bring somebody in and say, okay, here's your new boss, And try as hard as we may to test and evaluate, you still don't know for sure until somebody's in your building for 6 months, and you see how they behave on a daily basis. So it's all about the people. I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm missing some things. Any other questions that sparked my memory?
If you could give us like one piece of advice to take with us today, what would it be?
I think building your personal brand of integrity and character, because it'll follow you for your whole life, and networking is so important. I get reminded the other day. Somebody came in that was asking for a donation to a very worthy cause. And I had been gone out of the country for 2 weeks, and I just was so busy, and I just had my secretary blow them off and say, it's not in our budget, And I actually got a nasty letter, from that individual, which kind of irritated me, because he doesn't know the thousands of requests I get. He doesn't know that I was, And then I cooled off after a day, and I wrote him an email back, and I said, thanks for the letter, I didn't take enough time. Almost brings tears to my eyes, because to him, that was the most important thing of the day. And I could have taken 2 minutes to take care of that. So, you have to be careful. In my position, we have a big responsibility, to our employees and our community, and I take that very seriously. It's not about the money in a company, at least not to me. It's more about what we do for our employees and our community, and, there's a lot of wealthy people out there that aren't very happy. And to me, the profit, you have to have profit in a business. Don't get me wrong. We love to be profitable, and we're a very profitable company. But we reinvest in the community and our employees and everything else. And, it's a big responsibility to be involved with that. And if I think about it too long, it starts to scare me. But then I kind of forget about that and get back into the excitement of growing another business, and so anyway.
What do you do to continue to grow your culture and just to continue to maintain that? You said the people,
Yeah.
hiring them.
Right.
Do you do anything internally then?
We're doing a lot internally, and thank goodness I don't have to do it all, because it'll wear me out. But I have a young lady that's our HR generalist that's she's a rock star. We're doing wellness programs with our employees. We get involved with, Whitley County has this corporate challenge, so all the businesses compete in all these different events, and so they're just doing stuff constantly. We're doing our own internal leadership training, and we also work with local universities. I mean, we have a number of employees that attend IPFW and Indiana Tech and various universities around, but we are, you might say, building our own internal university. We actually have this. We're on contract with an organization that provides a lot of technical training too, and then leadership development. Just recently, within the last 6 months, assembled a group called, it's our kind of a brainstorming group of 10 key people in the organization, and they are just looking at the succession of our business and the organizational chart, because we have 300 employees today, and if we continue on our average growth rate, which is 11% a year for the last 5 years, we'll have 500 or 600 employees in 7 years. So the organization that we have today is not going to handle that. So we're really proactively thinking about what we're going to have in place on all fronts, you know, not just square footage or capital investment for equipment, but the organizational chart to support that. So, yeah, so thinking a lot about leadership development, succession planning, because, you know, I've got some other people in my organization that, unlike me, they want to retire sometime. You know, I love what I do so much that, you know, I probably won't retire. But I will say I have a lot of flexibility in my life. You know, I'm not stressed by my business. You know, it doesn't run me. One attribute I have is the ability to delegate. I like to delegate, especially when I have people I can trust. And usually, almost always, that will do the job I'm delegating better than I would or could. So that's key also to a successful business, if you want to grow a business. I've got friends that start a business and still have it today, and they've got 5 people, and they're happy, and they're making a nice living, and that's fine. To me, I have to have change and growth, or it's boring. It's no fun, you know. We have to be improving, growing, changing, and that's just my nature. And people laugh at it because I can't help it, you know. My wife was often asked, why are we starting another business, or why are we doing this? And honestly, I don't have a great answer, because it's not, oh, so we can make more money, or, you know, or so we can just have more stuff. No, it's the thrill of the hunt. It's like, why do people go fishing or hunting or whatever? It's the challenge of dropping the line in the water, or, you know, whatever, you know. It's that process. And to me, business is fun, and, you know, it's challenging and rewarding and all those things.
Do you have like a business mentor, or do you mentor like any other people who are interested?
Both, certainly. Whoops. Yeah, we do some of that through co-ops and internships. So since 1991, just a couple years after I started business, we started working with the local high school, Columbia City and Homestead and others, to get students in, you know, and employ them and stuff. So we've done that. We do it with colleges and all that. Wonderful program. Some of those students, actually those first 2 or 3 years, they're all still there at Micropulse. And most of them have gone and got a 2-year or 4-year degree with help from the company, and, you know, flexibility in their schedules to allow them to do that. So, you know, it's great for the students, it's great for the business, and we continue to do a lot of that today. You know, I enjoy doing things like this. I mean, you're our future here, and, you know, it's a small investment that I might make, and, you know, maybe a spark will light in one of you or all of you, and who knows. And, you know, starting a business, like I said, it's not for everybody, but if you go to work for somebody else, I mean, it's a vital, you know, every person in our organization is a vital asset to the company, and we couldn't do it without them. And you know, if everybody wanted to start businesses, then there wouldn't be anybody to, you know, help run them. So, how are we doing on time?
Good. You've got about 15 minutes.
All right. Bring them on. More questions? Yes.
I know you said that you have a focus on the orthopedic industry.
Yes.
But as you continue to grow, if an opportunity came up, would you break into another
Ha.
industry again?
That's a super question. I love that question. If you would have asked me that 15 years ago, I'd say, yeah, tell me about it. You know, I'm going to go after it. And today, I have blinders on like you wouldn't believe. Within the last 6 months, we've been teased with opportunities in the aerospace industry. And the aerospace, especially the commercial aircraft industry, is going through a boom right now. They're replacing all these jet engines with more efficient jet engines, and we've gotten into this new additive manufacturing technology. It's like rocket science. You take lasers and you build parts, 3-dimensional parts out of powder, and it's really cool stuff, and aerospace is really using that. We've purchased 2 machines, but we've decided that no, we're not. We're staying focused, because I just feel like if we dilute our resources, it'll be bad. You know, we want to be the best that we can be for our customers. And, you know, if I was starving for opportunities, maybe I might think about it, but we're not, you know. And, you know, so many times in my early career in business, I would go after, it's like a hunting dog following a rabbit trail. You know, they sniff something and they go zooming off, you know, not thinking about anything, not thinking about they're crossing a road, a busy road, and it gets smashed. You know, it's not a lot different in business. If you're following these rabbit trails, you know, with your nose to the ground, you're not looking at the big picture and how it affects your business, your customers, existing customers, and everything else. So have to be extremely careful about that focus. Now, there are examples of companies in this local area that are very diversified and doing very well, you know. Some of our competitors, CNA Tool in Churubusco, has 600 or 700 employees, and Dick Conroe runs that, and he started in the 1960s, has about 600 or 700, and he's in aerospace and medical and automotive and a lot of different things. Not for me, you know. So yeah, focus, focus, focus for us. And I would argue that the better you get in your area, the more opportunities you're going to have. Because if you, when I talk about my company, I talk about all the people in my company, not my company, because I didn't do this, you know. I did it. I mean, I was a small part of the success of my company, right? But we have a brand and a reputation of high quality and integrity. In other words, integrity means, you know, making a promise and keeping your promise, right? So on-time delivery, when we tell somebody we're going to have their parts in 13 weeks, it happens. Now, not always. We make mistakes. And when we do make a mistake, or if it's our customer's mistake, it's our recovery that really sets us apart, right? All hands on deck. We don't care whose fault it was. We're going to make it right. We're going to fix it, you know? And that's the attitude that will win customers for life. It's, you know, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. There's something to that. And, you know, if you're just, okay, so in my industry, there's a lot of consolidation. My customers are consolidating, like Zimmer and Biomet in Warsaw just recently came together. Well, now that whole group is 38% of my business. There were like 5 different companies. Biomet was buying some of our customers, Zimmer was buying some of our other customers, and all of a sudden, Zimmer bought Biomet, so it took like 6 customers and put them into one. So there goes my market concentration. That's my job right now. Well, one of my jobs is to, you know, diversify my customer base now, and that'll take years to happen because now it's 38%. We like to have no one customer more than 20%, preferably. 38's not terrible. I mean, I have examples of companies that have 90% concentration with one customer. Very dangerous, but you better have a good relationship with that customer, I'll tell you. So, what was I trying to answer? Did I answer it, whatever it was?
Yeah,
You can't tell I've got any passion for industry or business. Yeah. I was talking about brand, though, of the company. You know, it's almost like, and I don't want to take the air out of anybody's balloon as far as marketing people, but Micropulse basically sells itself because of the momentum we have. Now, we're not trying to grow really fast. Although 11% growth on a company with 300 employees, that's quite a bit of growth. That's healthy growth, right? For the accounting people here, there's something called a sustainable growth rate, right? And it's a matter of how fast are you growing, how much money are you making, and how much equipment and capital investment can you make, right? So our sustainable growth rate is, depending on the year, 15 to 20%. So we could grow a little bit faster. But I also like the idea of not getting too far in debt and being more stable. I learned some very hard lessons about being levered too. I was in debt a lot when we went into some rough times, and I don't want to be there again. You don't want the bank, you know, telling you what to do. You want to be able to tell the bank what to do. And if you have really solid numbers, like we do today, the banks kind of beat your door down and want to do business with you. And that's where you want to be. So I was talking about personal brand. You know, companies have brands too. And you know, personal brands that are solid as a rock, they sell themselves. You know, there are certain people around that if they called me and said, hey, I just lost my job, I need something to do, I'd say, okay, come on in. You know, I've been known to hire people that I didn't have an opportunity for because they were right people that walked in the door. And it's always worked out right, you know. The right people will find things to do and they'll help you grow your company.
I have a question.
Sure.
I don't know where I heard it from, but like apparently there's a statistic where it only takes 3 big issues with a customer for So how do you build a strong relationship with your customers so that doesn't happen?
Right. Yeah, and it's been said that they'll remember, a bad thing way longer than they'll remember a good thing. Now, it's always fun to get a compliment or an email or an award from a customer saying, great job, on this project or whatever. But, things do go wrong, and we are late. Something happens, we scrap a whole batch of parts out or something, we have to call them. So it's all about building that kind of a bank account. So, it works in personal relationships, and it works in business relationships where you're always trying to build that bank account for that day when you have to, somebody's going to make a withdrawal, and you hope that it doesn't go negative because then you've got a problem. So it's how we react to the issues, because they will happen, there will be bad things happen for whatever reason. It's how you react, and then it's how you're operating on a daily basis. In our situation, we have account managers that are the front line with our customers. So every customer has a person that they go to that's their person, and that person, is their liaison within the company. And we have a depth of relationships too. It's not just that person, but it's a quality person, an engineer. I try to get involved sometimes, at a high level with our customers, when they pay us visits. The best thing we can ever do is have a customer come to our facility. Because when they walk through the facility, they can see our culture. All they have to do is walk through the place, they can see people. There's actually some people smiling that they actually think they want to be there. And, it's just a different feel. It's not a firefighting, feel in our company. Some people call it relaxed, but we have people working really hard. It's just that it's a process. It's flowing. The work is flowing through. It's not like we're fighting fires at the end of the month. It's marching through, and people aren't all frazzled and stressed out. We don't have mandatory overtime. We try to be family friendly. We try to work with people that are going through issues, and life happens, and people are sick, and family members are sick, and they go through things, and there's more to it than. So I got sidetracked. See, that's a quality, flaw of mine, to get sidetracked sometimes. But I was talking earlier about the brand and the personal brand, the corporate brand, and how that all works together. I guess I got that covered. Any more questions? Yes.
Could you tell more about your innovation center, how it came to be, and is that mostly internal guys decided to start up, or are you?
No, actually, it's I've had a couple situations where my employees have started businesses, and I think probably about 3 or 4 times, and it hasn't really been all that. It hasn't been a negative thing for me. And when I think back to my career when I worked at another company and I watched some of those people start businesses, it was very disruptive. And part of it was, I think, the culture of that business. But people went out of there almost with a vengeance to take customers and steal employees and all that. So it was damaging to that business. And I watched that happen. But I will say, over the years, I had a couple employees early on that did some underhanded things and kind of tried to steal business away from us and things, and it was kind of hard on us, but for the most part, over the years, I've had 3 or 4 others start businesses, and in one situation, I actually found a small business for sale and helped, kind of refer one of my employees who wanted to start a business to that situation. So, but the Orthovation Center is primarily opportunities that we discover through networking. For example, our most recent business is called Restoration Medical Polymers. If you drive out US 30, there's an industrial park out in Willie County called Park 30. There's a new building, a 45,000 square foot building going up right now, 2 doors down from 8020. There's 8020, Iatron, and then our building, big gray building. And through networking business associates in Fort Wayne, I discovered an engineer that was in the polymer industry, in the medical industry, that wanted to start a business. But he'd been wanting to start a business for 10 years, but didn't really have the resources, But he had the business connections. He had the engineering background and training. Had the relationship with the customers and everything. So we got together, formed a partnership, and long story short, we've got this building going up, and there's 3 employees now of the business, and We've got some contracts with some of the major OEMs, and that business is going to produce, it's called UHMW polymer, and it's the plastic basically for the hip and knee. There's only 2 suppliers in the world of that product, so there's a definite need for another supplier. So that's how that happened. It was simply networking, and we spent a lot of time getting to know this person, because when we go into business with somebody, we're going to be even more careful than if we were hiring that person, because we got to make sure that our culture's aligned, that we look at business the same. So we spend a lot of time on that piece, and then the lawyers get involved, and put all that on paper and contracts and everything. So, but it's very exciting, because that business is, it's coming out of the ground right now, and that's the most aggressive that we have ever been with a startup business. We're investing over a 4-year period, probably $9 to $10 million. Now, a lot of that will be borrowed, because we can borrow money on a building and equipment. So we're providing some financing ourselves, and have bank financing, and we wouldn't do that if we didn't have a pretty sure thing, the relationships, some contracts in place with some customers, because my model was very bootstrapping in the beginning. It's borrow money secured with my house and buy one machine, and then get that machine busy making some money and buy another machine. So very one step at a time, and whereas some of these other businesses, we have a spine company called Nanovi, and it's kind of a virtual company. We have some employees at Micropulse. Our headquarters is in Carmel, Indiana, where we have 3 employees now. Now that business, we've raised money on 5 different occasions. We've invested about $13 million total with money that's been invested from outside investors to get to where we are now. And the business is almost 10 years old and it's still not profitable, and that's not uncommon in a spine startup. In 2017, we hope to just become profitable, and sales are tripling this year, and next year we think they'll double again, and it'll take that. So, some of these businesses it takes a lot of runway to get them off the ground. It's different than starting a manufacturing company where you buy a machine, you start making parts, and you start getting paid right away. But when you're talking an R&D company bringing new products to the market, in our situation in the spine, we're bringing these new titanium porous implants the bone likes to grow into, new technology to the market. It seems like it takes forever. It takes a lot of patience. And I hate raising money. It's hard, to get investors to buy in, and write checks for, big numbers. It's really hard. Yes?
I'd like to return to something Brent said earlier, and that has to do with character. I'm Bob Kosterbank, and I'm the president of the board of campus ministry, and I was the CIO here for 16 years, and also taught as an adjunct professor in the management of IT. But before that, I spent 35 years in manufacturing and banking, and the last 30 I've been CIO at wherever I was at. I'd like to get back to the point of character, because I'll tell you, as in management, which is where I spent my entire 51 years of career, if you don't have character, you're not going to survive the problems that will occur around you. There are a lot of people who want your job. There are a lot of people who don't like the way you do things. And there will be people under you, in spite of good choice of employees, that are going to make some real screw-ups. And it's going to be your character as the head manager, or eventually the chief executive, that's going to carry the day. Anytime I had to clean up a mess in all these 5 decades, I found that one of my employees had made that mess because of a lack of character somewhere.
Yeah.
Made a bad moral judgment, a bad character judgment. They tried to race ahead and make money when they shouldn't have, and so on. So,
yeah.
What's your experience?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's near and dear to my heart. A lot of times you'll think that, why are these people winning? Why are they taking business from me or whatever? Because I know they don't operate above board. We've got competitors that we know are whatever, they're buying business or they're cheating or whatever. And it's like, but it seems like they're winning. But, I've been in business long enough to know that you do it right and it pays off in the long run. One of the things that's happening in our industry with customers and competitors is consolidation. right? So we talked about Zimmer and Biomet going together, and it's happening all over. It's also happening with my competitors. You know, people like me are saying, I give up, I'm going to sell, you know, and they sell to private equity or they sell to a large organization that's publicly traded. Well, they operate way differently than a private business. You know, we can operate with a foundation of integrity because we choose to, but if you're operating to please Wall Street and there's any flaws in any characters in that organization, you know, you become very short-term focused. So, you know, you think, well, it doesn't pay to invest in the future because I need next quarter's earnings and I need next quarter's growth, you know. So why should I invest in leadership development? I mean, I'm going to be out of here. I'm the CEO and they'll replace me in 4 or 5 years, or we're going to sell the company, so who cares, you know. So there's a lot of that in corporate America, you know. They're operating for the short-term results. Publicly traded is the worst, but even private equity, they want to flip their companies every 3 to 5 years, typically, not all. So, you know, that's one major reason too that I would not want to sell my company, is because of what might happen to it. Within some of our customers, we see the culture every day of the various cultures. And I will tell you that the Zimmer culture in Warsaw, Indiana was not healthy. Those people didn't trust each other, and they treated their suppliers poorly. Over a 25-year period, I could give you multiple examples of where we were not treated appropriately. We would make investments for equipment to do a project for them, a significant investment, and then they would decide to move it to Puerto Rico, and basically no warning, just done, you know, all kinds of stuff. And there was all kinds of, you know, what I would consider, you know, less than desirable situations. Well, with this new merger, they have recognized the fact that the Biomet culture is superior, and so, you know, they're taking the best of both cultures. I'm very pleased with what we see. You know, it's a breath of fresh air. And, you know, if you're not diligent as you grow a company, you can lose your culture. And that's what has scared us about, you know, we're at 300 people. Can we maintain that culture? And there's no question in my mind that you can maintain a culture. There are examples of billion-dollar companies plus, you know, with thousands of people all over the world that have really good cultures. It takes hard work, and you got to be intentional about it. But, you know, if you don't guard that culture constantly, you know, gravity will take it down. Just, you know, just the simple fact of bringing more people into the organization, you know, that don't get your culture, it has to be a discipline, and it's part of our core competency. It's, you know, developing, improving, growing. You never finish with it, you know. And it starts at the top. I mean, I have to believe in it. I have to support it. I don't have to do it all, you know. I don't have to do the hard work of it, but you can't just talk about it, because there are many examples of companies that have wonderful mission statements and credos and everything else, but when you get down in the guts of the organization, it's like, these don't match. So trust, you know, which is developed with people with character and everything between each other, it can catapult a company, you know. Again, I caution you to be diligent in the companies that you apply to work for, so that you don't have to, you know, fight that battle. Did I answer or address that?
And I would say your choice of employees too. I mean, you can't be the person at the top as the only one that has integrity.
Absolutely not.
You better have the managers under you as you grow up the ranks. Choose managers, because you can't be everywhere at all times.
Yeah.
But to me, after like I said, 5 decades, I would, as a management person, the biggest skill I would have is integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Integrity and character.
Yep, no
They'll
question
carry
about
you
it.
through.
And it's got to be the fabric and the DNA of a company, because you know, it's been said that the most important relationship in a company is your direct supervisor. You know, that's who you work with. It's who you know, take direction from and everything. And, you know, I can sit up in my office, but I rarely have contact with all these people. So honestly, it doesn't really matter what kind of a person I am to a certain extent. You know, it's as you get down through that organization, what do these people believe in, and, you know, what are they telling their people? And we have, you know, zero tolerance for, deviation, significant deviation from our, our moral character and our, integrity. We've had a few situations where, mistakes were made by people and they're, immediately terminated because we just don't have a tolerance for that. Now, it's not that we don't try to work with people and everything, but there are certain boundaries that, if somebody crosses that, we just can't have it. If it's a situation where there's somebody falsifies a document or something like that, those are zero tolerance issues. You just can't have it. It's trust is out the door and no excuse for it. All right. Well, it's been my pleasure to talk with you, and I wish you all the best in your careers, and thanks for spending a few minutes with me.
It felt so nice.